Yo, peep this. You just clicked on Let's View It, and I'm Tyrone Cross. Welcome to my channel, where I'm here, back again, trying to do great reactions for you guys from TikTok videos, and also discussing other topics I find interesting or important, or maybe just crazy and try to make them seem important, or maybe just boring and try to make them seem crazy. But either way, if you're a virgin clicker, you know, the first time you ever clicked on my video, then you're new to the crew and we welcome you. And all I ask, if you want to be permanently adopted into the family, is after this video, if you like how I do what I do, please subscribe, help support me, help support this channel. Why? Because this channel is badass. Don't believe the naysayers. So now, let's get into this video. This is gonna be another one of those mess with people emotion videos because it's about a very smart genius, the greatest astrophysicist we've ever known. That's right, Neil Degrasse Tyson. I'm doing another video on him, and I don't care what people think. And in this video, guess what? Your hero, your genius, the leader of our universe, the holder of all answers to the world, the smartest man with a mustache, is also a transgenderism supporter. What? So here's an interview with him and Ben Shapiro talking about how he feels about it. So you already know. Let's view it.
So moving on from climate change, which is an area, as I said, where some people on the right are not particularly interested, to areas where it seems like the left is militating against the advent of science. One of those areas is the area of transgenderism, where the argument made...
Seriously, there's I have no transgender letters.
It's true. It
was just
nothing in the book.
Yeah,
I know. We've strayed now far from the topic of your book, but since I have you here and you're a science person who knows science, I'm going to ask you to science for me a little bit.
Sure.
But when it comes to transgenderism, the argument that is typically made by gender theorists is that gender is entirely separate from sex. You've seen the argument made that it makes no difference on average if men are stronger than women are, and that if we were to allow transgender women to compete with non-transgender women, then this would somehow not disadvantage biological women. And this seems to me absolutely ascientific, that if we're actually going to have a discussion about gender and sex, that should be based in data, which suggests that mammals are in fact binary in terms of their sex, unless you have intersex birth defects typically, or genetic defects.
I'm happy to opine on this.
Look, I'm going to expose some things that Neil Degrasse Tyson does, the wizardry he does as he speaks and has these interviews with people, because he needs people to believe what he's saying. And what he's saying most of the time, he's making up. Now, what he did here before he started on the subject, he ended up using a word that most people don't know or use, and that's opine. I don't know what that means. I didn't know that word existed. Now I can deduce what it means by the way he used it, probably interject, give my feedback, give my thoughts, right? But the reason why he used the word opine to start off this subject is to set the tone and send the message that I'm a very smart guy that you're talking to here. I'm the smart one in the room. So don't question what I'm about to say.
This only matters because today we segregate nearly all sports by gender. Otherwise, why do you even give a shit what someone identifies with? So we live in a free country.
See, he started off with a vocabulary word, then said a very dumb statement, and then gave us a nervous laugh because he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he doesn't believe what he's saying. Oh, I forgot to say this part too as well. He is paid to push this idea. They use these scientists and pay them to push their agendas and their ideas. So even if this is not what he believes, this is what he's told to say.
And with consenting adults and people free expression of who and what they are.
Man, on an adult level, I agree with you. I think it does matter what you teach
That's
your
what I'm
children.
saying. And so there's the matrix of what you are biologically, how you express yourself, who you choose as a sexual partner. If we actually live in a free country, as we tell ourselves, people's freedom to behave in any of those ways should not concern you at all. Nor are they requiring that you behave that way. Okay?
Well,
this is for their own freedoms, because we live in a free country. Now,
I want to point this out too, because it's another tactic that Neil deGrasse Tyson uses in his interviews. See, if you ask him a question out of inquiry purposes, meaning, please tell me this information, I want to know it because I don't know it, he will start rambling on about all this information and all the great stuff that he knows to tell you about it. But if you ask a question that is challenging what he's saying, he will talk over you and ignore your question. And that's exactly what he did right there to Ben Shapiro. Because Neil deGrasse Tyson was trying to say they're not demanding us to live a certain way. And I'm pretty sure Ben Shapiro was going to jump in and say, but what about them demanding these pronoun things? What about them demanding to go into the women's bathroom? And all the other things that we know affect our lives that they expect from us. And what did Neil deGrasse Tyson do? He cut him off immediately and kept going. Let me back it up real quick so you can see.
Nor are they requiring that you behave that way. Okay?
Well,
this is for their own freedoms, because we live in a free country. Now,
see, Ben Shapiro tried to jump in and he went, well. Neil deGrasse Tyson kept going. Then he tried again. He said, well, and Neil deGrasse Tyson kept going. He never let Ben get past the word well.
Requiring that you behave that way. Okay?
Well,
this is for their own freedoms, because we live in a free country. Now, what is unresolved here is, what do you do with sports? It's unresolved. And I've followed that closely, and I don't see any meaningful solutions to come down off of that. We know that hormones manifest differently in different people, and just the whole thing with steroids. Steroids are hormones, right? And we rallied against steroids in professional sports because it gives you an undue advantage. So, and I've tried to think of what the future of sports would be in the world of a gender spectrum. And it may be, you don't specify whether it's a male or female sport. You just take measurements of what your hormonal balances are. And so you compete based on your hormones. I mean, this is thought I had. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where it's going to land.
More nervous laughter.
The WNBA won't be in business for very long if that's the case.
It would just be, you'd have to find some way to compete people against each other if you still care that sports is an interesting activity.
I guess the area where it does come up in a non-sports area.
Yeah, tell me, I don't know.
So it would be, you talk in your book about the education of children and teaching children about science. And right now, children are being taught about the quote-unquote gender spectrum, which is not scientifically based. That is a theory-based idea.
No, wait, hold on. People express themselves on a spectrum. So you learn that.
That's a social point, not a scientific point.
It's
meaning we express ourselves
hold on.
Based in different languages. Is that something you teach in science class, or is that something that you teach when you're teaching language?
So whether the fact that people want to express themselves on a spectrum, on a gender spectrum, whether that fact is something you want to put in a sociology class or in a science class, maybe that remains to be determined. But it is a real fact about real society.
Well, of course, nobody's denying that people identify how they want to identify.
So
the question is, what is the relationship of that to biology? Meaning that the argument is made.
Neil deGrasse is dodging his questions right now. Clearly.
Trans women are women, for example. And what that seems to mean is that trans women are identical to women. Now, if people want to say trans women are not biological women, obviously that is the case. But people don't seem to want to say that. Although that is obviously scientifically true. Trans women are not biological women. Biological women are biological women.
But where are you going with this? What are you trying to accomplish?
Why couldn't Neil tell Ben right there? You're right. A trans woman is not a biological woman. I'm telling you, he's paid to say these things. This has been going on throughout all of our history, all the way back to Einstein and even before that.
By asking yourself, is it science or is it not science? It's people in society.
But this is a perfect example of an area where suddenly it doesn't matter to say things that are just true. Like, why is it bad or wrong to point out.
I have another way to approach this. I care what is objectively true in the world as a scientist. But let me not say even as a scientist. I just simply care what is objectively true. And science happens to be a pretty potent path to invoke, to find out what is true. And so if people express themselves on a gender spectrum, and that is an actual thing in an actual society, if we have not fully explained that scientifically, that's an interesting frontier to study. If you want to say it's only sociological, then it's the purview of the social sciences. I don't care who studies it. It's an interesting fact about society that's worth learning about. To fight someone and say, it's not biological, it's just your this, it's real and it's there.
Well,
because it's real because it manifests.
But it is real because it manifests. But the question of how to classify manifestation is a scientific question, meaning that, for example, there's a woman over at Brown University. Mm-hmm. She came out with a study that suggested that there was a phenomenon called rapid onset gender dysphoria, in which a member of a particular group would suffer from gender dysphoria, and this person's immediate peer group would suddenly have an onset of gender dysphoria. This paper was so controversial that Brown tried to pull it, and then was forced to reassign it later. You see this sort of treatment.
That's a different question. What you're asking now is, are there some topics that should not be studied scientifically?
Right.
And is there some taboo? Sam Harris speaks a lot about this.
Yes.
And I think the concern is, if you study some topic that's a hot button topic and you bring scientific methods and tools to it, we don't trust, I'm interpreting here, I think we as a society don't trust that people in charge in a free country won't try to legislate something that will constrict people's freedoms in the face of that information. I think that's the fear.
Well,
did he just say whatever we will find out scientifically from transgenderism would make it so that legislation is written against them? That sounds like there's something dark that we would find out about them. Now, maybe that's true. I don't know. But all we're trying to say is a trans woman is not a biological woman, and a trans man is not a biological man. How much legislation can possibly come out of that? All it would ever stop is trans women from going in the women's bathroom and playing in women's sports and locker rooms, or anything that consists of women being protected and having privacy against men.
It's a fear.
I mean, and isn't that...
We don't trust our own ability to govern ourselves in the face of what could be some information relative to other kinds of information.
Isn't that a bit of a problem?
Yes. Yeah. It's not. It means it's not a free society. It's not a society of free inquiry, which I think you need ultimately. But yeah.
My general take on all of this stuff, from climate change to gender dysphoria to all of these issues, is bring out the science and then let's hash it out. I think that the problem I'm seeing on a lot of sides is,
what is your motivation?
Why? Right. Why does that matter?
It matters because if you have political power, you could end up creating legislation that subtracts freedoms from people who previously were enjoying the same freedoms as you. The history of that exercise
then make a better argument.
Doesn't end well.
Well, but the history of which exercise? Bring out all the science and let's hash it out.
Hold up. Neil deGrasse Tyson is supposed to be one of our biggest scientists, all about science and how it finds truth. Now he's saying we can't do science for gender dysphoria because the information we might get / the truth will cause legislation to be voted in that will stop some people's rights. If the truth is so bad that you have to write a law to stop people from doing certain things, I think we should know that truth. But earlier in the video, didn't he say that's something that should be studied?
If we have not fully explained that scientifically, that's an interesting frontier to study. I don't care who studies it. It's an interesting fact about society that's worth learning about.
Maybe I'm wrong.
If you bring out all the science and the politicians hash it out, the history of that exercise is a recipe for disaster if it involves discoveries that put people's freedom as defined in our Constitution at risk.
But now you're arguing for limitations on areas of particular study.
No, I'm arguing on we need a way to we need a way to protect people's freedoms in the face of whatever gets discovered scientifically.
So
I'll give you.
I agree. I think that's what the Constitution is for, is to guard rights from.
But we're always fighting people who want rights are always fighting others who are saying they don't get the rights from the Constitution. This is a daily challenge on the progressive left. It is a daily challenge, right? Here's an example. I forgot how I ended up getting this phone call. It was some magazine that serves the gay community. And I remember why, because they wanted my opinion on, they wanted my opinion about whether being gay was biological or mental.
Right, there's that new study that came out, this vast study.
Or psychological.
Right,
okay?
Right.
And I said, I don't care which it is. Find out what it is, fine. But the answer to that question should have no consequence on legislations or laws. Because, for example, suppose it said it's purely biological, okay? Then you say, oh, that explains it. Suppose it says it's purely psychological. What are you going to do now? You say, well, now you're going to go to the reorientation camps or whatever those are called, where they realign you because they say it's psychological rather than biological. All of a sudden, people start behaving in ways in society that want to constrict the freedom of expression of who and what people are. And that is a danger. So maybe there needs to be a line in the sand. Let science do what it does, but politicians keep us free. Yet there's so many politicians that are doing the opposite of that.
So why aren't you a libertarian?
And that scares me.
I'm a libertarian. Come over here. Just
okay.
The line is right here. Just join me over here.
Here I go. Come over. I've read a lot about libertarianism. There's some fascinating strong points within it.
Well, I guess they're done talking about transgenderism, but as you can see, Neil Degrasse Tyson is a big advocate and supporter of transgenderism. I got another clip of him talking to Stephen A. Smith about transgenderism, even solidifying the fact more that he is pro-transgenderism, even though he's supposed to be a renowned scientist and all about finding the truth, but apparently he doesn't want to know the truth behind transgenderism. Why? Because if we find the truth, we might write a bunch of legislation taking away rights. But really, what I wanted to show is that Neil Degrasse Tyson is paid off and he says what they tell him to say. He stands for what they tell him to stand for. A lot of Ben Shapiro questions could have been answered very easily with a yes, I think that, or no, I don't think that. But he has to do the whole song and dance. I can almost guarantee you, if he went against transgenderism, especially in a scientific way, his whole title, all his fame, all that will be gone. We would all be like, remember Neil Degrasse Tyson? What happened to him? He has so many cool and interesting things to say. He always cared about the truth and finding aliens. But now that you know, the world's most famous astrophysicist is pro-transgenderism, all I need you guys to do is comment below. Tell me what you think. Do you think Neil Degrasse Tyson is phony baloney? Do you think someone was standing behind Ben Shapiro and doing this to Neil Degrasse Tyson? Or do you think he just likes being the star of the show, so he's gonna say whatever they want him to? But while you're telling me your thoughts, I'm also gonna need you to hit that bell like the hunchback. Also click that hitchhiker button and subscribe with me. And I'll see you on the next trip. Day and night.
Keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real. All my life. Keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real.